When you were a kid, a dumb kid, you had those seances, and you know, it's all spooky, you invite like 10 teenagers over, and then you're gonna raise somebody up using one finger. How many of you have seen that, okay? And they're like, oh, it's magic. It's not magic. It's basically weight distribution issues, okay? All you're doing is just spreading the weight around. And everybody does their fair share, you live for kid. Everybody's like, oh, no, it's just very simple math and division. And here's the scoop. Just so you know, if we're almost over the hump from the summer, we had a gift financially this week. If RiverTree's not your home or you're visiting for the first time, you don't have to listen for this. But if this is your home and this is your family, it's been a tight summer and we were down and somebody gave a gift this week, which puts us very, very reachable for us to get over the hump today. And so if this is your home and you haven't given this month or whatever, this would be a good time to do so, but we're really thankful. We knew we would survive, but it's been pretty tight, but it's always tight here, and we're kind of okay with that. It's just who we are. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Also remind you to continue to pray for Simon. Simon's about 11 months old now, and he has spent almost all that time in intensive care. I don't know what they call it for prenatal, but that's where he's in the natal ward, and he has had a tough go. And so if you remember, Kim and Bob, they call this place home. They haven't been around because they've been in the hospital almost all the time with little Simon. So keep him in your prayers. He's had a couple of setbacks, but it looks like he's doing a little bit better, and so don't forget about that. Also wanted to mention Bill back there, who's a longtime friend of RiverTree, buried his brother, his oldest brother, here last week. And it was a tough time for him to say goodbye to his brother. Has a lot of great memories, but I remember him too as he makes those kind of adjustments. Here's the scoop. We're in a new series that we started last week. In the way of introduction in the series, we gave you just up front last week what we call 2 sayings in a verse. And we want you to kind of keep these on the back burner and think about them often as it relates to what we're talking about in this series. If we had a title for this series, I didn't have one last week. I might have one this week. And it's called, by the way, Energizing Your Life. And how to re-energize your life. You kind of want to be like that Energizer bunny. Very obnoxious, but he keeps going. And maybe what you need is a jump start and a start over, a fresh start. And so that's kind of the series that we're going to be in for a while. But last week we gave you 2 sayings in a verse, and here's the 2 sayings, and I love this one. This one is, if some butts were cherries and nuts, we'd all have a Merry Christmas. And this is the kind of person who has the mentality of framing life in the context from the reference of what might have been if things had been only different. It's a person who says, well, you know, my life, if life would have been fair, if I would have worked harder, if I would have been given the opportunity, if that teacher, that coach, that employer, that neighbor, that spouse, that person, it's always an if and but, if this would have been played out differently, I'd be so much better off. And this person is always doing this. They're always looking back over the shoulder of what might have been, regretting the past. And when you always look at, listen, I'm nostalgic. My wife will tell you I'm very nostalgic. And I have some regrets. I should have never bought that new Mazda. And that goes back to 1980 or 81. So I understand, okay, this issue. But what I'm saying is when we're always looking back over our shoulder of what might have been, it does 2 things. Number one, it robs us of the present moment. And then too often we let it define our future. And so we're paralyzed by our past. The second saying with that in mind is this, and I got this off somebody's blog, a pastor who blogs, and I like it. It says, living my life as is instead of as if. And this is the person who's fully living in the present moment. And when it comes to the future, they're looking forward to an adventure with anticipation. And that's kind of the direction we want to be going in this series. How can I enjoy the present, not be defined by my past, and be excited about the future? And so we had a verse that kind of took us that direction. And I love this passage. John 10:10. I've come so that you can have life. I want you, Jesus says, to have it the fullest possible way. Another translation says it this way. I've come that you might have a better life, more better, it says, which is bad English, than you ever dreamed or imagined. Okay? And so that's where we want to head. God says, Jesus says, I've come that you might have life. And what happens is so many times people are so busy making a living that they don't live. So busy trying to fulfill a to-do list or get to the next ladder or take the next step that they miss out on living. And so we're trying to move off of that to get what God has promised. So we started looking at Matthew chapter 11 last week. We looked at 3 verses. And there, in just 3 verses, Jesus gives us everything we need to know about what we would call stress management. And here's what he says. Jesus said, come to me, all you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Next slide. My pointer doesn't work. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I'm gentle and humble in heart. And you will find rest for your souls. And my yoke is easy and my burden is light. I'm bummed because I had my text here in my notes. I manuscript everything because I like to chase rabbit holes. But there are 4 words underlined in that text. And we've been focusing, what we're doing now for the next couple weeks is we're focusing on some words. And we're looking at 3 words that lead to the 4th word. And those 3 words lead to a conclusion if we do them. And those 3 words in that text are come, take, learn. And then it says, and you will live. So we're looking at come, take, learn. And then another text that we're going to end with today, that same text says it this way in another translation. Come, take, learn, and you will find rest for your souls. So we looked at come last week, and we said it's very, very simple. Jesus says, come to me. And we think about coming to Jesus for a lot of reasons, but usually not for rest. Okay, we talked about what does that mean, and today we want to look at the word take. And here's the text, Matthew 11:29. Take my yoke upon you. And I want you to know this is a little bit harder to do. One of the reasons you and I are overloaded, one of the reasons we are stressed, one of the reasons we have heavy burdens is because we try to control too many things. Now I know there's nobody here quite like me when it comes to wanting to be in control. I love control. I love driving. I love determining when we stop. I like determining how fast we go. I like determining the itinerary. I like the remote, the sign of power in the house, if you have the remote. Because then you can watch what you want, and if you don't like it, you can change channels. My wife and I fight over the remote. But it's usually not because of the channels, it's usually because of the volume. My wife hates commercials. And I do too, but sometimes I like them. And I'm a guy, so it doesn't even have to say anything. It's moving pictures. Okay, you know what I'm saying? I'm ADD. I like, oh, look at all that color. Okay, I love that. And so, but we have these issues, but I like to be in control. And so what happens is if you're a control freak, many of us are, then we act as if all of life depends upon me. And there's that saying, some of you, if you're a type A personality, if you don't know this saying, you live it. And it's this: if it's to be, it's up to me. Okay? And it's a thinking that I've got to hold this all together. If I don't hold it together, it will not be done right. And so I've got to do it. I am the CEO, I'm the person in charge, I'm the project manager of my universe. And so we have this issue of high control. Well, let me tell you something. Guess what? You know, you could let go of all of it, and guess what? The world's not going to stop spinning. The chances are it's not going to all fall apart. For some of you, can't be true. You're like, that's not true. But I want you to realize that if you give up control, what you're going to find out is you really didn't have all that much control. You had a lot less control than you thought you did. So here's the fact. The greater your need to be in control of things, the more stressed you're going to be. The higher your need to hold it all together, the higher your need to hold it tightly, the greater the level of stress in your life. So here's the scoop. If you want to lower the stress levels in your life, then you got to let go. You got to release. You got to give up the wheel. Don't make all the mistakes yourself. You know, spread around a little bit. Spread the blame. Let other people make some mistakes. You got to give up control. This is why Jesus said, take my yoke upon you. Now, what's the yoke thing? Some of you are thinking, well, I know what that is. That's the yellow part that has all the cholesterol. No, it's a different word. That's not what Jesus is talking about here at all. The yoke is a wooden beam. Do we have that slide? That's a wooden beam boot. Here it is. That's a yoke. No, that's a parable. No, parables are those little stories that Jesus used to tell. Close. This is a yoke, and a yoke is a wooden beam normally used between a pair of oxen or animals, a lot of times oxen, that enables them to pull together on a load when working in pairs, as oxen often do. So if you're looking at this and Jesus says, take my yoke upon you, some of you are like, oh, that's all I need. Okay, I'm already overstressed. That's not like a stress reliever. That looks like more work. That looks like all of a sudden I'm going to take some more. My life tray is already full. I can't get anything else in my backpack. But I'm already carrying too much. Why would I want Jesus' yoke on me? But that's not the point. The purpose of a yoke actually is to make the load lighter. That's why they do this for the benefit of the farm animal. See, there we go. It's an animal. It's another word. It's Greek for animal. And it's Greek for animal. Instead of like a harness on one cow or one oxen or one cow pulling a wagon or a plow or a load, you get this yoke and it combines the strength of two. And it cuts the load in half, if that makes sense. So 50% is being carried by some other person or some other animal. Years ago, my son Aaron, I think he was like 11 or 12 years old, and he weighed all of 75 pounds. And he was helping me put up sheetrock. I've taken the job with a friend who said, hey, I need something to sheetrock in my garage. And so we got those, thing about sheetrock. It's not fun. And these sheets were 4 by 12, which makes them a little heavier. And the idea is if you use 4 by 12 versus 4 by 8, you have to put less up, but they're a lot more weight. So we were up on this ladder, and I could not do it by myself. If you know anything about sheetrock, it's kind of hard to do myself. But I could if Aaron helped me. And I remember I dogged him because if you've ever done sheetrock, you're standing up on stuff, holding it up, and it was just right there on the edge for Aaron. There's no way he'd have a chance to do it alone. But if he'd help me out about 10% of the load, you said to me, if you can help me, I can do 90% of it by myself, but if you just help me out with that 10%. A yoke isn't a 10% rule, it's a 50%. It cuts it in half. It kind of has a lightening effect. It lightens the burden. It decreases the weight because you're sharing the load. And interestingly enough, it actually also helps you increase the weight that you're pulling in total weight. So if you have two animals, they can pull more together. Does that make sense? And that's why Jesus says this, my yoke is easy, my burden is light. So what does he mean when he says, take my yoke upon you? What was he saying? A yoke is metaphorically speaking, and what he's saying simply is this. There are two things this yoke symbolize, and both of them are stress reducers. The first is a symbol of partnership, of teamwork. And what that means is simply this. You were never intended to carry your burden of life alone. There's this verse in the Bible that goes something like this, that God has put this eternity in the hearts of men. There's always this thing that realizes there's something bigger and stronger in life beyond ourselves. A supernatural power. An empty space that God only can fill. Made by God for God, okay? So you were never meant to go at it alone. And some of us live life as it's all up to me, it's all about me, I gotta pull myself up by the bootstraps, I can do this on my own. Life was always intended to be a team sport. Not just with other people, but with God. And so, what Jesus is saying was, he says, take my yoke upon you. What Jesus is basically saying is this, I'm going to take part of your load. I'm going to help carry your burden. He's not adding to your load by putting the yoke on you. He's joining you in sharing the load. Now, just so you know, Jesus doesn't have a load. Okay? He's God. It's not like Jesus saying, okay, listen, I want you to share the yoke. I'm just so tired of running the universe. No, dude. So I want you to take part of the responsibility. It's not what he's saying there. It's not, he doesn't have a burden he's bringing to the plate. There's no such thing as a rock so big that God would create it so big that God couldn't carry it, if you know that old discussion. He's not bringing a load to you. He's joining you to make the load lighter. He has no problems except for you and me. So that's it. And just trying to get our attention to help us. So this is not a big deal for God. This is not God coming saying, I'm bringing weight to burden you with. I'm helping relieve the weight that you're burdened with. That's why Psalm 55:22 says this great verse. It says this, pile your troubles on God's shoulders. He'll carry your load and help you out. And you need to know that God's back is a little bit stronger than your and my back. A while back, I helped my son Jake move to Texas. Now, if you're a Husker fan, you know that the wages of sin is Texas. Okay, Texas is a synonym for hell. And that's why it's burnt orange. Okay, because red's burnt there. It's an evil place. It's a dark, it's orange. And orange is scary because we associate orange with Halloween. And so there's just this evil there. So we went down there and it was hot. And we shared this day together, Jake and I, called the day from hell. And this is why it was such not a good day. Because Jake had rented an apartment on the 3rd floor and there was no elevator. Just concrete outside steps to get everything up. His wife thought they needed a new vacuum, a new disher and washer, you know what I'm talking about? Not disher and washer dry. And the wash machine was horrific. Most of you know I lift weights, I like to go to the gym. This was horrific. And it was seriously heat index 112 to 115, no breeze, concrete steps. We took everything up. It was just Jake and I, and carrying everything up there by ourselves in the heat. Jake actually was sick, so I was carrying a little bit more than the 50%. And I'm serious. If there was any doubts in my life in the last year about God being a reality, it was when I was carrying that wash machine up those steps. It was terrible. I could have never done it alone. Jake would have been with me. So I'm saying that helped. And he moved this last week, and I'm not there, and I was glad. And but that's what just saying, listen, I'm not going to add to your load, I'm going to lessen your load. I'm going to share the load. Let me take some of that for you. Let me carry some of that for you. So Jesus is saying, he says, take my yoke. He's saying, join up with me, get connected with me, get yoked with me, and I will help you. I will help you. Jesus says, my yoke is easy. Let me ask you, is your yoke easy? Is life pretty easy? Do you feel overwhelmed? Do you feel maybe stressed? Some of you are starting school soon. I don't know about you, but summer's been great, but fall usually, because most of us here, our lives revolve around a school schedule, we think of summer as vacation and relaxing. I'm not saying it's true for everybody here, but there is that feel that now I'm going into fall and it's starting to crank up. Some of you are teachers and you're cranking up. Some of you are getting ready for school, you're cranking up. Some of you, it's like, now the kids have gone to school and they're off, I can crank up. And so I want to ask you, do you feel overloaded? Do you feel like your life tray is about to tilt and you have no more room? But here's what I'm saying, it sounds judgmental. Don't take this judgmentally or harsh. But there's a good chance if that be true that you're not really yoked to Christ. Now you say, well, how do you say it? Because Jesus says, my yoke is easy. And if your yoke isn't easy, that means you're probably trying to carry your yoke, your life, your burden, your stress alone. Now, you might be rightly related to God, but poorly connected. You ever done that? Come on, if you're married, you know how that works. You said I do, but we don't. We say I do, but we don't communicate well. You can be rightly related and still lose that connection. It's true in relationships, it's true with God. So I'm not saying you're not going to heaven. You're going to go to heaven. I mean, if you ask Christ into your life, that's a done deal. You're going to go to heaven, but you're going to get there and your hair's going to be all frizzled. You're going to have a lot of wrinkles because you're like this. My wife always says, my wife will tell you, watch when my husband is really thinking about something or reading something or working at something. Because she goes, oh my, she goes, that's an ugly face. Okay, she goes, you always look mad. I'm not always mad. Okay, and mostly because I'm squinting because I refuse to wear those glasses until I die. All right, refuse to give in to that. But you're stressed out, so you got wrinkles. And you might end up dying before your time for 3 reasons. You got worn out to adrenaline, you got high on caffeine and burned out on nicotine. And you know what I'm saying? Because we're just stressed. So if you feel like the load is heavy and the pressure's intense, chances are you're not yoked. Or you've got yourself disconnected. He says, my burden is light, my yoke is easy. It's about partnership. Let me in. The second symbol is surrender. Submission and surrender. A yoke lessens the weight, but there's 3 other things that the yoke does besides lessen the weight. It controls, it directs, and it guides. So, your load will be lighter, but there's a trade that needs to be made, and that is, you got to give up control. Listen to this verse. It says this in Galatians 5. Since we live by the Spirit, let us keep in step with the Spirit. You have to keep it. When you're yoked together, you ever done a 3-legged sack race? There's some coordination there in the stepping. If it's not coordinated, 2 people are going down and somebody usually is underneath, okay? There's some coordination here. When you're yoked together, there's a rhythm that begins to develop as you get in step together. So you're going. You're moving together in the same direction, and then you begin to adjust and go at the same pace. When you're yoked with Christ, it's impossible to go off in a different direction than Christ, because He's right there. When you're yoked together, you can't go slower or faster, because it's right there. Because when you're yoked, He sets the direction, He sets the pace, because you've given up control. One of the benefits of being yoked with Christ is you don't end up going off in the wrong direction. You make less mistakes. You don't mess things up. There's a problem reduction. When it comes to stress, the one thing you need is direction. And if you're in step, God steers you in the right direction. Is God going to go faster than you can handle? No. My son and I here years ago, we were in the Black Hills and we were climbing together, and he was young enough where, if you know me, I enjoy that, and I enjoyed it when I was younger. But I love climbing. Okay, I like to do that. But when I was with my son, it changed. Because it wasn't about getting to the top fast. It was about taking the hardest way to get there. It was about making sure that he was okay. Aaron's independent too. He wanted to have some independence. But I also wanted to keep him safe, you should say. So I was close in proximity where I could grab him if I needed to. Sometimes I was underneath him in case he fell, I could catch him. Sometimes I wanted him to be stretched a little bit and I knew he could handle it, so I pull away just enough where he was within eyes, sight, maybe reach, but he could go on his own. And that's what it means to be yoked to Christ. There's times when He can allow you to go on your own, to be stretched. There's times when you realize you're in a precarious situation, He's going to be there to catch you. And there's times He's right beside you, and He shares the experience. And He gives you enough time to make the climb. I want you to know this. If you never have enough time to get it all done, there's probably chances are there's something on your to-do list that wasn't on God's to-do list for you. In fact, it might be worth mentioning to this. I don't think God is a to-do list person. I don't think, in fact, He'd have a to-do list for you. I think He'd have a to-be list for you. I think God's more concerned about who you be, who you become, who you are, than He is with what you do. Now, if you know anything about theology, belief affects behavior. Okay? Who you are affects what you do. But He always has the horse before the cart. He wants you to concentrate on who it is He wants you to be. Then He's going to worry about the to-do. So I want you to understand a couple of things. First of all, God does not give you less time than He gives you things to do. If you don't have enough time, there's a chance you've added things to your list that aren't in the will of God, or there are things on your list that are the will of God that you're doing them the wrong way. You'll always have enough time. And then number two, God's more concerned about who you are than what you do. Sometimes God allows us to hit a detour. I hate detours. Okay, I hate waiting at detours. I hate detours. One time I had my granddaughters with me. I probably shared this story before, but I had Paige and Chloe with me. That was my son Aaron's kids. And Yvonne had agreed to babysit with them, and then she had other things to do. I love my wife. But I had things to do. She had a situation where she had to go take care of it. So I got the grandkids, and I was a little stressed. So when it was time for me to take them to Mom and Dad, I was going to get there on time. You with me? And so I got in my vehicle and I headed down 40th, and I hit construction. I thought, I know, I'm smart. I'll just take a right, go down 2 blocks, take a left, and go around. You ever done that? Come on. But I went down to the right. That road was on the detour. I took a left and I hit another detour. Now every time I hit one of these detours and it didn't work out for me, this is what I would say. Son of a buck! That makes me so mad, okay? And I turned. Son of a buck! That makes me so mad. And I did this 3 times, and then I hit another one. I went, And my granddaughter, Paige, goes, son of a buck, that makes me so mad. My son didn't think it was that funny either. And so I'm passing on stress to 2 generations removed. Because I'm in a hurry. I'm going to take control. I'm going to make up my own rules. When you take Christ's yoke, you surrender. You're not going to go your own direction. You're not going to go too fast. And you're not going to get burned out. The Bible says this in Romans 3:28. Our lives get in step with God by letting Him set the pace. You know what's interesting about the New Testament? If you go to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John and just read through it, I want you to find all the times you think that Jesus is stressed. Now, I don't think He ever gets stressed. I think He gets irritated. That's a different matter. He got irritated with the Pharisees when they were jerks. I thought they were better than others. And overlooked the people on the periphery. He got ticked at the temple when they were charging people to go make sacrifices for profit and gain. And the only time you see him stressed is when he sweat great drops of blood, and that had a whole lot more to do with not him being overloaded, but this issue of the cross and what it might mean with him and his Father. But he's never in a hurry. He doesn't look at his daytime. He's not popping out his calendar. He's not worried about not making appointments. He's at ease. He's never. There are times when there's expectations on him. He handles it with ease. There are times when he's being badgered by the Pharisees and religious leaders. Deflects with ease. There's times when people are pressing in on him, but he doesn't feel the pressure. He is never in a hurry. And as we said last week, Jesus was not a good American. He was not a good American. Alright? There's this one time where Jesus gets word comes to Jesus. It's a busy time. The word comes that one of his closest friends, Lazarus, is sick. And he is so sick that they know he's going to die. So his sisters, Mary and Martha, send word to Jesus. Jesus is just a day away from where Lazarus is. They give word to him, come quickly, because Lazarus, is going to keel over. He's going to die if you don't get here. And we know you can heal him, so please come. And Jesus is 1 day away. It takes him 3 days to get there. That's one of those points where me and Jesus are tight. I get that, okay? My parents used to call it lollygagging. Do you remember that? Which I thought just meant just enjoying life. And so it seems like, oh, Jesus is a little bit ADD, a little distracted, okay? What's up with that? But what happens is Jesus basically says, we're not in a hurry. He's sick. We're not in a hurry. He's going to die. It's okay. It's okay if he dies? Yeah. That'll work out too. That doesn't make sense to us. So here's a scoop. If there's a delay, in your life, it's probably because God's timing is not your timing. And just so you know, this is your pastor speaking, God's timing usually sucks. When I compare it to my timing, when I look, Jesus, we need to get this just done. He's just not Jesus. Hey, Jesus! He actually heard me the first time. All right? So what does that mean? It simply means this, and I want you to get this. God has a better plan. Now I want to be really careful with that. I want you to hear this very, very carefully. He's got a better plan. He has a different plan because he has a different agenda. So you got to be really careful with that. All right? Because you might be thinking, like my granddaughter, I took her out to ice cream one time, and I got her one of those McDonald's kiddies cones. But I told her, if you wait, we're going to get some ice cream. What she heard is, I'm going to get more ice cream. She was like, oh, more ice cream. And then when she got home, she was really disappointed. And so I don't want you to think better means better in your mind. Because he's taking you to a better place, helping you reach your potential, help you to become more like him. So let's make sure we understand better. Lazarus is dying. Jesus is like, it's a beautiful day. It's a day for a picnic at the beach, isn't it? No, Jesus, Lazarus died. Okay? But he wasn't in a hurry. You guys know Psalm 23? The place you probably hear it the most is where? Funerals. And it's interesting because people think, that it's for the person who's dead. Just so you know, in the northern part of the hearse, that would be already done. Okay? Their story's already, it's done. The text is actually read for those who are grieving, going through loss. So it says, I think mostly used because of the phrase, as I go through the valley of shadow of death, I will fear no evil. There is that incredible sense of loss. Okay? But it's about rest. It's about being connected. It's about being yoked. I came across a version of it written by an author who was Japanese. I'm not sure if that influenced his right, but I want to read you what he wrote, and I want you to put it in the context of a yoke being easy and you being stressed. It says, the Lord is my pace setter. I shall not rush. He makes me stop and rest for quiet intervals. He provides me with images of stillness, which restores my serenity. He leads me in the way of efficiency through calmness of mind. His guidance is peace. Even though I have a great many things to accomplish today, I will not fret, for His presence is here. His timelessness, His all-importance will keep me in balance. He prepares refreshment and renewal in the midst of my activity by anointing my mind with oils of tranquility. My cup of joyous energy overflows. I love that. That's why it stands there alone. Surely harmony and effectiveness shall be the fruits of my hours, for I shall walk in the pace of my Lord and dwell in His house forever. That sounds refreshing. That sounds like a pace that I can handle. That sounds like waiting is okay. Here's the truth. The truth is you guys are going to be yoked to something. Some of you are going to be yoked to your careers. It's all about the job. It's all about getting the project done, getting promotion, getting a bigger salary. And maybe one day, working hard enough that you get the corner office with the windows in the view, and there will be a plaque on the door that has your name, and underneath it, it doesn't matter what it says because it spells success. And you will have the respect that you are due. Some of you are going to be yoked to your careers. You know what happens? Someday, sometimes, too often, you find out that ladder's against the wrong wall, going nowhere. And one day you're cut because they can get a green weenie right out of college with less experience, but they'll pay a whole lot less money. And those little plaques that said you had a good year, the gold watch that says goodbye, which really means your time over here is done. And somebody else gets that office, that's how it works. I wouldn't want to be yoked to that. Some of you are yoked, get this one, to school. Because if I get that advanced degree, then I can get, how does that work? Some of you are yoked to parents. I have a friend, who still to this day is trying to prove his dad wrong. His dad told him, you are a loser, you will fail, you will never succeed. His dad's been dead for over 2 decades. And he still lives to try to prove his dad wrong. Some of you are yoked to peer pressure. You think, well, that is just dealing with teenagers. Peer pressure is those people that you share the water cooler at work with, the people that you work with at your job, and each trying to impress the other of what you've been able to do, accomplish, and acquire. And some of you might have a desire to acquire. You've got to have the right house, the right spouse, and the right car to get where you're going. And it's always about getting more and more and more. And that's an insatiable thirst. We all yoke to something. You're yoked to something. And the question is it easy? Jesus says, take my yoke. My yoke is easy. I like the word easy. What does that mean? Easy doesn't mean coast. Easy doesn't mean challenging. Easy doesn't require effort or work. You know what easy means in the Greek? It means this: completely and perfectly fitted. What it means is the yoke he has for you is tailor-made, custom-made for you. It fits. I've got this goofy thing on my toe. Gotta go to the doctor. I don't know if it's a plantar or something like that. I don't like it. It hurts. And I got it because I bought a pair of shoes on sale. Number one, they look cool. Number two, they were cheap. Those are two of my highest qualifications with choosing a shoe. That's changing now that I'm older. And they cause this sore to rub, so it's not fun. All right? Here's the scoop. They don't fit. Okay? But I'm cheap, okay? But it cost me more than I thought it would. Does that make sense? When you take Jesus' yoke, it's not a bad fit. It's not going to rub you wrong. It's not going to be a burden. It's not going to cost you more than you thought. It's a perfect fit. It's going to be custom made for what you can handle. It says, take my yoke. And here's the catch, and we're almost done. That means you're going to have to make a change. You're going to have to make an exchange. That means you're going to have to stop and take something off to put his yoke on. Does that make sense? Because only when you put his yoke on does the stress go down. And the truth is, most of you here have a dozen yokes. A financial yoke you're worried about. A health yoke, because you got more tests. Future yokes. What's going to happen now that I lost my job or had this change? Relational yokes. I've got this problem at home. I've got this problem at work. I got difficulty with a neighbor. I've got a conflict with a friend. All kinds of yokes, and I guess all kinds of stresses. I guess we could say the yoke's on you. But the bottom line is this: doesn't mean you take a vacation. Doesn't mean you get away, because like we talked about that last week. Some of us think that the issue is always geographical. If I just go and start over, if I just leave and put it behind me, it doesn't work that way. And so God's not trying. Well, He's not going to say escape. He just says take my yoke upon you. Because the bottom line is this: you never had control. That's the delusion. You never had control. Steve Jobs, I was reading recently in one of his speeches, and there's not going to be a sequel. But if you've seen the movie, there's not going to be a sequel. Because he's dead. All right. So Steve Jobs spoke, and one of the things I appreciated is when he came out and says this: you don't have control. You do know that he started a company that did okay. Did you know that he got fired for the company he started? That he got fired by his own company. So he started another company. Trumped him and made it another. Not that guy, that's a different guy. He did well. Okay, that's a Trump. And so anyway, he did well. And he was in charge. No, because why? Because he ended up having cancer. I'm just saying. Control is a delusion. You didn't control the day you came into this place, and you're not going to have any control when it's time for you to leave. That's how it works. And Jesus says this: Come to me, give up control, I'll share the burden, I'll help you carry the load. I'm going to read this verse to you and we're done. This is the text that we read earlier where he says, come to me. But this is from the Message. And I want you to hear these words. I'm going to try to read it in a way that hopefully you catch the message. Because I want you to feel the rest of the promises. Jesus said, come to me. Get away with me and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. That's the green light. That's what we're being handed to us. The question is, are you going to take that? Let's pray. Hey God, life's hard. And I think sometimes we live in the delusion that it'll be easier tomorrow. But it won't be easier tomorrow, it'll just be different. And it'll be a heavy weight, but it'll be wrapped in different wrapping. It'll look different, but it's going to be the same thing because life is work. And yet you come to us and say, listen, I'll tell you how to live life and to live it well and to live it lightly, to live it freely. So God, help us to do this trade, this take. And that's the hard piece. What does that mean? And that means that we start our day by saying, God, I've got this day and I need your help. Come and help me through my day. It's almost that simple. And you have to be reminding ourselves of that throughout the day. So God, today, when we go home, sometimes we're going to go home sometime today and we're going to change our shirt. And I pray we'll think about this idea of taking off what we carry and then putting on what you have for us. Because you want us to live life and experience life, this incredible, miraculous adventure, this experience of being alive. You help us to be fully alive by walking life with you. And praise in Christ's name.